Every leader I've ever known has broke under pressure at some point, including myself. I have watched leaders hold under conditions that would break most people. Right? But I've also watched them collapse in rooms where nothing was actually on fire. The difference was not their talent, wasn't their experience. It's always their state. So the question is whether you've built the internal architecture to catch it before it costs someone. And that's what Seized is about. And today, I'm going to walk you through the 5 laws that are right at the center of it. So before we get into it and talk about why leaders break, let's define state. Because your state is not your mood. Your state is how you process pressure, how you're going to interpret data, respond to uncertainty, even carry your fear. Most importantly, how much of your identity is fused with outcomes. Right, so you can have 2 leaders facing identical conditions. One stabilizes the system, the other overheats it. Same situation, completely different results. The variable is not the pressure, it's the person receiving it. So the leaders who held were the ones who had built systems inside themselves before the pressure came. The ones who broke were the ones who assumed they had time. Oh, they'll figure it out later. But you don't. The system that you built before is what you fall back on. Right? So law 1, you're the engine. Everything in your organization runs downstream of your cognitive and emotional state. It's not your strategy, not your system, and it is not your team's talent, but you. So when you're clear, you're regulated, and you're functioning, the system around you has a chance to function, right? But when you're reactive, you're depleted, or operating on noise, the system is degrading whether anybody tells you or not. I did learn this the hard way. One of my roles that I had, I carried that pressure personally. I fused my identity to the scorecard. Results felt like survival to me. I wanted to be the best. That first year, 33 people left my team. Not all at once. Some were voluntold, some were voluntary. But one after the other until that system just hollowed out. I was not a bad leader by intent. I was just overheating the engine. And the team could feel every single degree of it. Now, a lot of leaders resist this law because it places full responsibility on them. And that's exactly why it's the first law, because there's no deflecting. If the system's broken, the first audit needs to start with the person at the top. Law 2, unfiltered frequency destroys signal. So your emotional state is broadcasting constantly. Your team is reading your body language. They're listening for your tone. They're looking at your availability to help them, your reactions. So they're doing all this before a single word of communication is read or listened to. Now, when you're operating in an unregulated state, meaning you're anxious, reactive, you're unclear, or you're inconsistent, again, you are broadcasting that noise. And noise is drowning out your signal. Your team is going to stop receiving your actual intent, and they start managing your emotional state instead. They don't get to do their jobs. They just wonder what's going on with you. So here's what that is going to look like in practice. So the leader's going to think that they're being transparent. They're going to send more emails. They're going to hold more meetings. They're repeating themselves, trying to make sure that they're getting this information and things are changing. but your team doesn't read it as clarity. Your team's going to stop asking questions, stop surfacing problems, and they're going to stop telling the leader what they need to hear and what they think they want to hear. It's not a communication problem, it's a frequency problem. So the fix, don't suppress your emotions or anybody's. Regulate them before you're broadcasting, right? That's not a weakness. That's just operational discipline. Law 3, the map matters more than speed. Leaders under pressure tend to default to action, you could say. They default to action because when you're doing something, that usually means you're moving forward. Something, anything. Because motion feels like progress. And for a while, I will tell you, it does. Calendars will fill up, deadlines will get met, dashboards will show green. But the problem is the destination was never confirmed. So there starts to get that gap in there, right? By the time you realize the team has been running hard in the wrong direction for days, weeks, possibly months, and they have invested so much that they cannot just easily stop and turn around. So that's your navigation problem. Now, I've watched this in boardrooms. I've watched it in the field. The pressure to act is real, and we all do it. But the pressure to act correctly is more important. Slow down enough to see the actual terrain and give your team an actual destination. You need to make a decision from a clear map because that's worth 10 decisions made from a full speed from a bad map. Law 4, ownership beats compliance. So compliance is what people do when they're being watched. Ownership is what people do when no one's watching. Every leader says they want a culture of ownership, right? We all want it. Most leaders have built systems that are rewarding compliance. They tighten oversight when things go wrong. They add approval loops. They sit in on meetings that they don't need to be in, right? From the leader's perspective, again, I've been there. It feels responsible, but what it's doing to the team is it's signaling to them that their judgment isn't trusted. So they'll stop exercising it. The test is simple. What happens when you leave the room? Right? If performance holds, you have an ownership. But if it drops immediately or after time, it's just compliance dressed up as performance. Because compliance collapses the moment that supervision is removed. It always has. The leaders who build ownership-driven teams are very clear about outcomes and a little bit looser on methods. So they tell their people what needs to happen and they get out of their way. That's why they hire them. They hold the standard on results, not the process used to get there. That's the only design that scales. Law 5, bad input is going to guarantee bad output. You cannot make decisions or good decisions based on bad information. And most leaders operate on information that's been filtered, sanitized, and managed before it even reaches them. So their teams tell them what they think leaders want to hear. Those dashboards are showing the numbers that were designed to be shown, right? But the real picture, that friction, the dropout, the quiet failures, right? They live somewhere below the surface, and nobody is surfacing it because last time someone tried, that leader's reaction made it not worth the risk. So this is that feedback loop, right? That silently destroys organizations. Bad state produces bad frequency. Bad frequency shuts down honest communication. Shutting down honest communication and the inputs that reach leadership get worse. Worse inputs produce worse decisions. The system is now running on distortion from every direction. Right? So the fix is to build the systems that surface the truth. That means asking those hard questions and rewarding honest answers. It means reading your own state accurately. So when your judgment's compromised, it means controlling your inputs, your sleep, your decisions, your information quality with that same intentionality that you'd apply to any other operational variable. Right, so start with one question you've probably asked your team directly. Watch what the answer costs them to give you. That tells you everything about the state of your inputs. Right, so one thing this week to audit yourself before you audit the system. At the end of each day this week, ask, was I clear today or was I broadcasting noise? Was I regulated or was I overheating the room? You don't need a framework for that. You just need the honesty to ask it. The diagnostic, these 5 laws are not sequential. They're a diagnostic. When something is breaking in your organization, one of these laws is being violated. Usually more than one. And usually the root is law 1. Because if the engine is compromised, everything downstream will reflect it. Seized is the full breakdown. What the violations look like in practice, why smart leaders miss them, and what the correction actually requires. So if any of what I just described sounds familiar in your organization or anywhere, it's all in the book. Remember, you don't eliminate chaos, you learn to lead through it. That's the brief.